All right, so are you ready to dive in? Today we're looking at, well, something every entrepreneur faces, right? Making those big decisions when the future is, well, a bit of a mystery.
A bit is an understatement.
Huh? Yeah, true. You sent this research article from Knightian uncertainty to real structuredness, and wow, Rapp and Olbrich really hit the nail on the head.
Don't they? It's kind of a relief to see someone acknowledge that sometimes those classic formulas and business plans, well, they just don't work when you're dealing with so much unknown.
Exactly. So their idea, this core concept of real structuredness, um, you ever feel like you've got a bunch of goals all pulling you in different directions?
Oh, all the time.
And you're weighing options, but the information, it's never complete, is it?
Feels like you're missing half the puzzle pieces.
That's real structuredness in a nutshell. And it's why judgment becomes your most important tool.
Your gut feeling, your experience, all of that.
The authors break it down into 4 types of judgment, each dealing with a different part of these, well, messy problems.
Causality judgment is first. Figuring out, in a world where you can't just rely on past data, what causes what. So what might happen if you choose this option or that one?
How do you even get better at that? Especially when things change so fast these days.
It's a mix, really. Experience helps, definitely market research, and sometimes, you just have to trust your instincts, connecting the dots, even when some of the dots are barely there.
Finding the pattern or realizing maybe there isn't one.
Right. And once you have some idea of that cause and effect, then you move into appraisal judgment. That's the weighing things up part, even when you can't really measure everything perfectly.
That's where I struggle. How do you compare like brand awareness with, say, how much profit you'll make right now?
It's tough. No easy answer there. Rapp and Olbrich say use a mix of things, hard numbers, and, well, your feelings too. You might have your profit margins all laid out, but does a decision feel right for your brand in the long run? Got to factor that in.
So trusting your gut, but having some evidence to back it up too.
Yep. Then there's goal judgment. Getting really, truly clear on what it is you're trying to achieve.
I've been guilty of trying to do too much at once. How do you get better at this goal judgment?
It often boils down to, what's the most important thing right now? What can wait? Rapp and Olbrich even suggest writing it down clearly like a mission statement, but for yourself.
Makes it more real, less of a daydream. And then every decision you make, you ask, does this get me closer to that goal?
You got it. And finally, there's solution judgment,
Yeah.
putting all the pieces together and deciding on something that, well, feels good enough. Not perfect, because perfect might not even be possible.
So accepting that sometimes good enough,
Yeah.
the best you can do when things are uncertain.
That's it. Finding a solution you can live with, that you can learn from, and that you can change later if you need to.
Rapp and Olbrich use a great example, a cheese entrepreneur starting a business. They're trying to show how these 4 judgments work in the real world.
Everyone loves cheese. But really, it shows just how complicated things get for an entrepreneur.
So this cheesemaker, they have a few goals. They want to make money, of course, but also create jobs, manage the risks, and, stay in business. Right away, you can see those goals might clash.
Right. Do you grow really fast, even if it means taking on more debt? Do you maybe compromise on quality to keep prices low so you can hire more people? No easy answers.
And then there's all the things they don't know. What kind of cheese will sell best? Where will they get their milk from? What if people's tastes change? Classic real structuredness.
And that's where this framework is so useful. It gives you a way to break these big, scary decisions down into smaller steps.
Okay, so instead of feeling totally lost, our cheesemaker can start by thinking about cause and effect, that causality judgment.
Yeah.
What if they focus on, say, artisanal goat cheese? Is there a market for that? How hard is it to make?
Exactly. Then they can weigh those options against their goals. That's the appraisal judgment. Maybe goat cheese is too, I don't know, specialized, or maybe it's perfect for their vision of a high-quality, unique product.
And goal judgment comes in when they decide what matters most. Maybe creating jobs is more important than making the most profit right away.
And finally, solution judgment helps them choose something that feels right, even if it's not perfect. Maybe they make a small batch of goat cheese first, see how it sells, and then decide what to do next.
So using all 4 of these judgments, almost like looking at the problem from different angles, to make a smarter, more confident decision.
That's it. And the best part is, this works for any decision, really. Launching a product, expanding your business, even just figuring out your prices.
I'm already rethinking how I make decisions.
Uh,
But before we go too far down that road, let's talk about something else. Rapp and Olbrich bring up what happens when you can't make every decision yourself.
yes. Division of labor, essential as your business grows, but can you really divide up judgment? That's what we'll tackle next.
Let's unpack that in part 2. We'll be right back. Okay, so we're back. And, even if you're a pro at all 4 types of judgment, you can't do it all yourself forever, can you?
Nope, not as you grow. At some point, you have to bring in other people, build a team, start delegating. It's division of labor 101.
But we're talking about judgment here, something that feels so personal. Can you really outsource that effectively?
That's the big question, isn't it? Rapp and Olbrich, they get into that. They say, delegating well, it's not just about handing off tasks. It's about figuring out which types of judgment and who's the right person for each.
Okay, so let's go back to our cheesemaker. They've hired, let's say, a head cheesemaker. Obviously, they're great at making cheese, but does that mean they're also good at making decisions about the business?
Maybe, maybe not. It depends. The entrepreneur might say, okay, you're the expert, you handle the cheese part, you decide on recipes, how to make things perfectly. That's, the causality judgment part, right? Cause and effect of ingredients and all that.
But then there are the bigger questions, like should we make vegan cheese too? Or do we need a bigger factory? Those decisions, the entrepreneur might want to keep those for themselves.
Exactly. And Rapp and Olbrich call this derived judgment. Basically, others make decisions, but it's based on the authority you give them. You're sharing a piece of your judgment, but ultimately, you're still responsible for what happens.
So it's all about trust, isn't it? Knowing when to let go and when to hold on tight. But how do you even tell someone, hey, use good judgment here? It's not that simple.
Well, maybe those 4 types of judgment can help us communicate better. Instead of just saying, I have a hunch, you can explain why you think something will work or not.
So let's say the cheesemaker is pitching a new cheese flavor to their team. Instead of just saying, this one's going to be a hit, they could say, okay, here's why I think this flavor will appeal to people who are into healthy eating, right? That's the causality part. And it fits with our goal of being the most innovative cheesemaker out there, right? The goal part.
Much clearer. Now the team understands where you're coming from. They can contribute better. It's not just a random idea anymore.
This is making me rethink what it means to be a leader. It's not just about making the right decisions yourself. It's about teaching others to do it too. But Rapp and Olbrich, they bring up another interesting point. What about judgment, about other people's judgment?
Ah, yes. That one always gets me thinking.
What does that even mean?
Well, as an entrepreneur, you're always evaluating other people, aren't you? Investors, potential employees, even your suppliers. You're trying to figure out, can I trust this person to make good decisions?
Wow, I never thought of it that way. So it's like you have to make good judgments yourself. But T, you also have to judge how good other people are at judging.
It adds a whole other level of complexity, doesn't it? Entrepreneurship is all about people, just as much as it's about ideas. Being a good judge of character, that's crucial. You need to find people whose judgment you trust, people who are good at making decisions in their area of expertise.
It's like that saying, hire people smarter than you. But maybe it's more than just smarts. It's about finding those who excel at the specific types of judgment you need.
Exactly. And I think Rapp and Olbrich would say that's a key difference between those who succeed and those who don't. It's not enough to have good judgment yourself. You have to build a whole team of good decision makers.
Makes sense. But this whole judgment-focused approach, it makes me think about those entrepreneurs who are, well, more spontaneous, The ones who seem to just go with the flow, change direction all the time. What about them?
Ah, the effectuation folks. Now that's where things get really interesting. Rapp and Olbrich, they definitely address that.
Okay, so let's talk about that debate in part 3. Because if even effectuation is based on judgment, then maybe we need to rethink the whole entrepreneurial game.
We might just do that. Don't go anywhere, folks. We're going to crack this effectuation code wide open.
Okay, so this effectuation thing, it's always a hot topic, right?
Definitely gets people talking. It's the idea that, well, you don't always start with a fixed goal. Sometimes you just work with what you have, try things out, adapt as you go along, like, making the most of limited resources, building those partnerships, and kind of rolling with the punches, the unexpected stuff that happens.
So being flexible, being opportunistic, instead of sticking to a rigid plan. But how does that fit with all this judgment stuff we've been talking about?
That's the million-dollar question. Some people think these two ideas clash, They say effectuation is about taking tiny, safe steps to avoid risk. But judgment, That's about making bigger decisions based on, well, what you think will happen in the future.
But Rapp and Olbrich, they don't see it as one or the other, right? And they think even those effectual moves, the spontaneous ones, they still involve judgment.
Exactly. They use the example of calculating your affordable loss. Sounds simple, right? Just a number, how much money you're okay with losing. But think about it. Underneath that number, there's a whole bunch of judgments going on.
Yeah, I see that. Even if you say, okay, my affordable loss is X dollars, that number, it's based on, well, guesses about the future. How sure are you that you'll make the revenue you're projecting? How much wiggle room do you have in your budget? What if things go really wrong? How bad will they be?
Right. All those questions, they're all about those four judgments. You're judging causality, what will cause success or failure. You're weighing options, the risks and the rewards. You're figuring out what goals are most important, what you're willing to give up on. And then you're making that solution judgment, choosing a path based on, well, whatever info you have.
So even if you're starting small experiments like the effectuation idea, you're still using judgment to guide you. It's not about jumping in blind. It's about calculated risks.
Absolutely. And Rapp and Olbrich, they say the same thing about another part of effectuation. Building your network, finding partners. It's not random, just working with whoever comes along. You're judging people, deciding if you can trust them, if they have the right skills, if they share your vision. Who you choose to work with, that can make all the difference.
This is really changing how I think about effectuation and judgment. It's not about picking one or the other. It's about realizing they both matter. You might start with that experimental, adaptable effectuation approach, but you're always using judgment to, well, navigate the uncertainty, make changes when you need to.
And that's what's so great about this framework, right? It gives us a way to talk about how entrepreneurs think. It shows that judgment isn't this, magical thing you're born with. It's a skill, something you can practice, get better at, learn from your mistakes and your successes too.
This has been, wow, a really eye-opening conversation.
Yeah.
I feel like I have a whole new set of tools to use when I'm making decisions. And what I really like is this idea that judgment, it's not about being perfect. It's about making the best call you can with what you know at the time.
And that's a really important thing to remember, especially if all this uncertainty is a little scary. You're not trying to eliminate risk. You're trying to manage it using your judgment to, find your way through and reach your goals.
So to our listener who sent us this article, thank you. I hope this deep dive has given you some things to think about, maybe even changed how you approach your own decisions. Remember, even when things are unclear, your judgment is your superpower.
And to everyone else listening, keep those sources coming. We love to dive into whatever you're curious about.
That's it for this deep dive. Until next time.